You have carried something your entire life that you never asked for. A weight, a quiet, heavy anchor dragging just beneath the surface of your daily routines. A strange, unbridgeable distance between you and the rest of the world. For decades, you might have called it a curse. You might have sat in the silence of your room, watching the world go by, and asked, why does everything take so much more effort to me? Why do I feel the edge of the world so sharply? Why is life so much harder for me than it seems for everyone else? But lately, as the years have turned into wisdom and the dust had settled on your past, you have started wondering if it actually means something else entirely. If these words already feel like a mirror to your soul, you have finally found your place. Subscribe to Mindful Sphere and let the space be the sanctuary you didn't know you were searching for. Here is what no one tells you about surviving the unthinkable. The fire of life doesn't announce what it's doing. It just burns. It takes. It ruthlessly strips away the confirmed thing. The fire of life doesn't announce what it's doing. It just burns. It takes. It ruthlessly strips away the confronting illusions we cling to. And when the smoke finally clears, something remains that was not there before. You have walked through losses that completely reviewed your nervous system. Betrayals that taught you a second language, the silent language people speak when their words are lying, but their energy is screaming the truth. You have endured seasons of isolation so complete, so suffocating. You wondered if you had been marked by something you couldn't see, society, and perhaps even your own exhausted mind would call that damage. They will tell you to heal, to move on, to just forget the past. But there is another word for it, a much more sacred word: initiation. It is the ancient, painful process of breaking the vessels, so the light can actually get in. And if you look closely at the person you are today, there are three distinct marks this initiation left behind. Marks that are invisible to most, but unmistakable to you. Mark 1. The wound that sees. Most people run from pain their entire lives. They numb with it endless distractions, with constant noise, with shallow pursuits. You didn't have that luxury. You had to walk directly through the center of it. You had to learn the intricate geography of grief. You had to map out the landscape of heartbreak. And because you did, you can now feel the subtle edge in a room before a single word is spoken. Your heart, the microscopic tremor underneath a perfectly steady voice. You recognize the specific, heavy gravity of a silence that is secretly begging you for help. For a long time, you probably thought this was a burden. You absorbed everything. You absorbed everyone else's energy like a sponge and went home completely drained. But this isn't just empathy. And it certainly isn't just sensitivity. But this isn't just empathy. And it certainly isn't just sensitivity. This is sight. Think about the strangers who inexplicably open up to you in their waiting rooms or grocery stores. People you barely know, confessing their deepest fears, their hidden regrets within minutes of meeting you. They don't consciously know why they are doing it. But their soul recognizes your soul. They see the survivor in you. Your wound did not just a close up and leave at that. Numbskull. It opened into a doorway. You can now look into the hidden rooms of human suffering that most people don't even know exist. You hold the lantern for those who are still stumbling in the dark. That is not a coincidence. It is a calling. Mark 2. The isolation that builds worlds. Mark 2. The isolation that builds worlds. You have sat at crowded dinner tables, surrounded by people, maybe even family or friends you've known for years, and felt like an absolute ghost. You have smiled through conversations that felt like hollow echoes in an empty hall. You have smiled through conversations that felt like hollow echoes in an empty hall. You watched people chase things that felt completely meaningless to you. You tried to care about the drama, the gossip, the endless pursuit of more, but your soul simply rejected it. You have watched old friends fade, not because of drama. You have watched old friendships fade, not because of a dramatic argument, but because you were simply no longer speaking the same language. You tried to shrink yourself to fit back into those old spaces, just to keep the peace. But it was impossible. For years, you probably thought something was deeply wrong with you. You wondered why you couldn't just enjoy the surface level like everyone else. But here's what actually happened. While others were busy filling their lives with frantic social climbing and empty validation, you were sitting in a silence, learning to tune into a completely different frequency. You were not being excluded by the universe. You were being protected. Small talk feels unbearable to you now because you have simply outgrown a small existence. The shallow and the pool can no longer hold the magnitude of what you have become. That profound loneliness you experienced, the kind of axe in your very bones was forcing you to build an unshakable relationship with the only person who will never ever leave you. Yourself. It was a cocoon. And what happens in the dark of the cocoon is not a punishment. It is a necessary transformation. Mark 3. The collapse that cleared ground. Mark 3. The collapse that cleared ground. If you are listening to this, there was likely a defining moment in your life when everything simply fell apart. If you are listening to this, there was a likely defining moment in your life when everything simply fell apart. The identity you had spent years carefully building. The future you had meticulously planned. The relationships you were certain would last a lifetime. The person you thought were never supposed to be. Gone, sometimes slowly fading, sometimes crashing down all at once. When the collapse happened, you probably fought it. You tried to hold the broken pieces together with your bare hands. You stood in the wreckage of your own life, staring at the ruins, wondering if you would ever feel whole or safe or normal again. But here is what the ancient builders and mystics knew to be absolute truth. You cannot construct something real, something eternal on a rotting foundation. Before life could build you into the wise, anchored soul you are becoming, it had to ruthlessly demolish everything you were pretending to be. It had to strip away the people-pleasing, the false security, and the exhausting masks you wore just to survive. It had to break your addiction to certainty and show you that you could lose everything you were afraid of losing and still survive. Your collapse was never a failure. It was an excavation. It was clearing the ground. And look at you now. You are built differently. You are no longer fragile. You are no longer dependent on external approval, on constant validation, or on perfect circumstances to know your worth. You are anchored in something so deep, so true, that is worldly storm can uproot it. That is not just resilience, that is fortress. So let me ask you something as we reach the end of this journey together. Do you still think all of those impossibly hard years were just random bad luck? Or can you finally see the masterpiece taking shape? The undeniable pattern, the rigorous preparation, the invisible hand tempering you like a master blacksmith, folding steel over and over again, preparing you for something far beyond your comfort. You were never meant to live a small, easy, unexamined life. You were meant to carry light into the very places most people are too terrified to enter. Every scar you carry, every devastating loss, every single moment you thought would surely destroy you. They were just another layer of spiritual armor being forgot. They were just another layer of spiritual armor. They were just another layer of spiritual armor being forged. You are not damaged. You are marked. And if you are still listening to this, it is because you are finally ready to understand exactly what that means. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of these 3 marks do you recognize most deeply in yourself? Because people like us, we don't find each other by accident. This is Mindful Sphere, where the wounded don't just heal. They became the map for everyone else. I will see you in the next one. Stay peaceful.